Alrighty, structs. So you just got done learning about arrays. Um, Arrays are uncategorized, just contiguous groups of data, and that's useful in everything. But the other half of the equation is very important, and it's where C can come as close as it can to object-oriented programming. Structs are like objects for C. So it's very important to understand essentially where object-oriented programming, at least as far as C is concerned, got its roots. So let me just kind of show you what one looks like, and then I'll talk about it. Structs typically have a definition. You have to define the type of object or struct you're working with, and then you could use one as if it was a data type. You're basically creating a new data type. It's almost as if like you're defining a new int, except it's a non-primitive data type. So typically you will have the struct. It's been a while since I've made one of these. And I think you put the name in front. Well, I'm used to doing it like this. That's why and then the name at the end. And I'll call this man. So we're going to create a man. Actually, yeah, that's fine. And man is going to have two properties. So this is how a struct works. You basically give properties names, and those names are unique to each man having them. So like each type of object of that struct will have an X and a Y. And we'll give them a third one called maybe like life, which just for the sake of using different data types, I'll put a short in there. You can have as many properties inside a struct as you want, and they can all have different data types. They can all be variables of different types. And I'm going to give them a string name. I haven't talked about strings that much, so I figured I would put a string in there too. So that's the struct. If I build this, it'll succeed. The idea of putting type def in front has to do with the way C is and the way it behaves. With typing being more strict, the best way you can think about it is if you don't declare a struct this way, it'll be kind of annoying when you want to actually use one. So let me go ahead and actually use the struct now that's available. So now the same way we can declare int, variables, we can actually just declare a whole man and have them exist, and which is pretty cool. There are two ways to initialize structs. One of the ways, which I don't like to use that much because I kind of find it risky when you add new types, is you can literally just put the variables in there in the order that they appear, as if you were initializing them kind of like the same way you initialize an array. The only thing that sucks about that is if you were to add another type in here, it throws off the order of these, and now you have a problem. So typically, there are many ways that C programmers will do it, but as far as I'm concerned, the way I typically do them is I'll declare them, and then I'll just set, the properties right after I declare them, which is just as fine. So there's a struct we've just declared. Once you declare a struct, you can access them in any ways you can, like an array. So, in order to get at the property, you put the name of the structure, the dot, which is essentially the, I guess you can call it the property accessor, and then the name of the property you want to get. And you can have as many structs as you want. So if you want to have a second one, it's the same idea. And setting the X property in man2 has no bearing or effect on man1. And if you think about it, these are kind of like two objects. And you can use them any which way you want. Oh, getting a little tired. It's getting late. hoping I can find out where this thing got created. Ha! I better just go with the console today. There we go. So that's the basic usage of a struct, which is pretty powerful. I wanted to teach you guys about structs before I finally moved into the next facet of programming, which gets away from always being stuck with standard I/O and printf and actually using graphics. But yeah, I didn't want to go into that before I at least showed you guys basic premise of how structs work, because it'll be hard to understand the next section of code if you don't at least know what a struct is or what it looks like. So as you can see, there's some very, very powerful capabilities here. So once you can organize your data and your variables into real-life objects, you can actually have your program start to take shape in like a way more like a human being thinks, where you can organize things. Another cool idea is you can combine arrays and structures. So for example, if you wanted to have 100 different men, you could declare 100 of them, and I think you get the idea by now. Initialize them, play with them, access them, all inside for loops all at once. So this for loop will actually run through the entire array of 100 men, initialize them, and treat them just any way you want. And if you want to do something unique for each one, for example, if you want to have the first 50 of them be on one side of the screen, have a lower x value, and then the next 50 of them have a higher value on the other side, you can do that. So you can do cool stuff like this. I'm using X and Y here because I'm getting ready to get into, as you guys are probably guessing, actually creating graphics windows so that you guys can actually start making programming, graphics and drawing on the screen, which is the beginnings of making video games and game programming using C. I commonly will create structs to represent graphical entities in a game, and one of the most useful properties is the X and Y position of something you're going to draw it on the screen, thinking kind of like graphing. But it's a lot more fun than graphing because it's not boring. I'm getting really tired, so I'm having trouble explaining all this stuff. I probably should go to bed before moving on to the next lesson, which actually gets into the graphics stuff. So I'm going to end it here, but that's the basics of how to declare a struct. There is a lot more to this when I start getting into dynamic memory, but as far as simple structs, declaring them and accessing them, you guys get the general idea. And I will expand upon this and revisit it as we move forward. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Take care.